Welcome back, everyone. Before we dive in, make sure you drop your thoughts and the lessons you took from this story in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Let's get into it. My name is Jalen Brooks. I am 35 years old, and last year I watched my father die from cancer. It was slow, ugly, and it felt like every visit stole one more piece of him until there was nothing left but skin, bone, and determination. We were close in that quiet way where you do not need a lot of words. A look, a raised eyebrow, a half smile. He could tell when I was lying, when I was scared, when I was proud of something and pretending not to be. My father built a business from absolutely nothing. He started in a rented garage in Cleveland with one old lathe, secondhand tools, and a stubborn belief that he could make precision parts good enough for aerospace companies that usually only trusted huge contractors. He worked ridiculous hours, missed vacations, and wore the same pair of work boots until the saw split. Eventually, he landed contracts, hired employees, expanded into a real industrial space, and turned that little operation into a serious manufacturing business. A few years before he got sick, he sold the company. The sale number was bigger than anything I had ever seen outside of a movie. Instead of blowing it on cars or a huge house, he did what he always did: thought long-term. He put it into conservative investments, talked with financial advisors, and set things up so that his kids would be taken care of when he was gone. When he passed, after estate taxes and division between me and my sister, my share of the inheritance was about $823,000. My sister, Latoya, is 2 years younger than I am. She is the one who inherited his charm and his ability to talk to anyone. I got his engineering brain and his tendency to overthink everything. Growing up, we watched him grind, watched him come home with grease on his hands, watched him fall asleep in front of the television with blueprints still in his lap. We understood that the money he eventually made came with a price, and that it was not something to be played with. My wife, Camille, is 33 years old. We had been married 6 years when my father died. Camille works part-time as a bookkeeper. She brings in around $28,000 a year. I am a mechanical engineer at a mid-sized firm, making around $94,000. From the start of our marriage, we kept our finances mostly separate. She had her checking account, I had mine, and we had one joint account strictly for the mortgage and household bills. It was simple, clean, and we never really fought about money. When the inheritance cleared, I opened a separate investment account at a completely different bank from our usual one. I put every penny of the inheritance into that account in my name only. I did not hide it. That is not who I am. I sat Camille down at the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and showed her the statements. I told her the exact amount. I scrolled through the transactions, so she knew nothing funny was happening. I told her plainly, "This is what my father left me." Camille's eyes had filled with tears. She reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said all the things that sounded right. She told me how sorry she was about my father. She said he'd been a smart man, how impressive it was that he built that business from nothing. She said the inheritance was a blessing, a safety net, and that we would not touch it unless we absolutely needed it. She said, "Your father took care of us. We will honor that." Hearing her say that felt like a warm blanket on a cold night. That warm feeling lasted maybe 3 weeks. It started in a way that did not seem like a big deal. One Saturday morning, we were sitting at the kitchen island drinking coffee. Sunlight was coming through the blinds, and the house was quiet. Out of nowhere, Camille looked around and said, I was thinking we should really update the kitchen. It is starting to look dated." We had fully renovated the kitchen 5 years earlier. New cabinets, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, the works. There was nothing wrong with it. I raised an eyebrow and said, "The kitchen still looks good, Camille. We just did all this." She waved a hand lightly, like I was being silly. Camille said, "It is nice, but imagine if we open it up a bit more. Maybe knock down that wall to the dining room. Get new cabinets, change the backsplash. We could use some of the inheritance. Just like $30,000. We would get it all back when we sell anyway. Kitchens sell houses." I took a sip of coffee and answered carefully, "The kitchen is fine. I am not touching my father's money for cosmetic changes we do not need." I said it calmly, not harshly, but firmly enough that there should not have been confusion. She pursed her lips like she did not agree, but she let it go. Or at least I thought she did. Over the next couple of weeks, the inheritance started creeping into more and more conversations. One evening, I was in the driveway wiping down my car, a 2016 Toyota Camry that was paid off and running perfectly. Camille came outside, leaned against her car, a 2019 Honda Accord with 40,000 miles on it, and said, "You know, my car is getting kind of old. I have always wanted one of those luxury sport utility vehicles. We could put a big down payment on one with the inheritance and still be fine." I looked over at her. "Your car is practically new, Camille. It has low mileage and no issues. A new car would just be spending to spend." She sighed and said, "I just think we should enjoy the money. Your father would want us to enjoy it. He did not save all that for you to stare at it in an account." She said in a half-joking tone, but there was a sharpness under it I did not like. I changed the subject. It did not stop. A few days later, she brought it up again over dinner. Camille twirled her fork through her spaghetti and said, "I have been thinking about going back to school, maybe getting my certified public accountant license. I could quit work for a while and really focus on studying. The inheritance could support us until I finish. Then I would make more money, and it would all even out." I said, "If you want to go back to school, we can talk about saving up, maybe adjusting our budget. But I am not planning our life around using that inheritance as a salary replacement. That is not what it is for." Another night, she flopped down on the couch next to me while I was watching a game and said, "You know what would be amazing? Taking a few months off, just traveling. You could take a leave from work. We could see different cities, really live. We have the money. Why not live a little? We are young." I muted the television and looked at her. "Because that money is not our travel fund. It is my father's legacy. It is supposed to be a foundation, not a vacation budget." She rolled her eyes, grabbed the remote, and unmuted the television without saying anything else, but I could tell she was annoyed. Every idea she had, rental properties, business investments, quitting jobs, luxury upgrades, somehow looped back to that account. It was like the number she had seen on that statement, 823,000, had burned itself into the back of her eyelids, and she could not stop seeing it. The night everything changed, I had made chicken parmesan from scratch. I breaded the cutlets, simmered the sauce all afternoon, boiled the pasta right before we sat down to eat. The house smelled like garlic and tomatoes. We sat across from each other at the dining table, the plates between us, the low hum of the refrigerator the only background noise. Camille set down her fork and looked at me with an expression I had never seen from her before. Her eyes were hard, her jaw tight. Camille said, "We need to talk about your inheritance." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. I put my fork down slowly. "Okay," I said. "What about it?" She folded her hands in front of her. Camille said, "I want to be added to the account. I want full access, equal control. I want my name on it." I honestly thought I misheard her. I blinked and said, "What?" She did not flinch. "We are married, Jalen. What is yours is mine. What is mine is yours. That is literally what marriage means. How are we supposed to be partners if you're keeping this enormous pot of money completely separate from me?" My face fell hot. I said, "That is my father's money. He left it to me. I told you about it. You know exactly how much is there. How is that keeping it separate?" She leaned forward, her voice sharpening. "Separate is the fact that I cannot access it. I cannot transfer money. I cannot make decisions about where it is invested. I have zero control. So yes, it is separate. You are treating me like I am some stranger you cannot trust." I shook my head. "This is not about trust. The inheritance is not marital money. It is what my father left me. He wanted to take care of me and LaToya. Not you. Not anyone else." Her face changed. It went cold in a way that made my chest tighten. Camille said, "So you do not trust me? That is what this is. You think I'm going to blow it all. You think I am some irresponsible child you need to protect your money from." I kept my voice level. "I think that money is separate. That is all. I am not saying you're a child. I am saying my father's inheritance is not up for negotiation." She gave a short, humorless laugh. Camille said, "That is rich. You act like it is sacred, like I'm trying to rob a grave. You know what? Fine. Here is how this is going to work." She straightened in her chair. "Either you add me to that account, full access, equal control, or I am leaving." Silence dropped over the room like a heavy blanket. I could hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen. I stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. "You were giving me an ultimatum," I said finally. Camille lifted her chin. "I am telling you what I need to feel like an equal partner in this marriage. I will not be in a relationship where my husband hides money and treats me like he does not trust me. I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman I had stood at an altar with, this woman I had laughed with, shared holidays with, held when she cried. She was sitting across from me, demanding access to nearly $1 million that she had no legal right to, and she was threatening to end our marriage if I did not give it to her. Something inside me clicked into place. I said, "Then leave." She blinked, her mouth falling open. "What?" I did not look away. "You heard me. If that is your ultimatum, then leave." Camille's voice rose. "You do not mean that. You're just angry. You are calling my bluff." I shook my head. "No, I'm not calling anything. I'm taking you seriously. You want to end our marriage because I will not give you access to my father's inheritance. If that is really the condition you're putting on this marriage, then yes, I mean it. Leave." Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, confusion, anger, disbelief, before settling somewhere between outrage and hurt. "You would seriously let me walk out over this?" Camille asked. "Over money. You're the one threatening to walk out." I answered quietly. "I'm just accepting what you said. You are the one putting the money above our marriage. Not me." Camille pushed her chair back, so quickly it scraped against the floor. She stood up, hands shaking. "Fine," she said. "Fine. I will go stay with my mother. Give you time to calm down and think about this like a rational adult. When you are ready to talk about being actual partners, you know where to find me." She grabbed her purse, her phone, her car keys, and walked out. She did not pack a bag. She did not hug me or say goodbye. The front door closed behind her, and the house felt suddenly too big, too quiet. I sat there at the table in front of a plated dinner gone cold. The chicken parmesan that I had been proud of 5 minutes before looked like someone else's food. I replayed the conversation over and over in my mind, trying to figure out if I had misunderstood something, if there was a version where she had not actually given me an ultimatum. But every time my memory rewound, the words were the same: add me to the account or I am leaving. Around 9 o'clock that night, I called my sister. Latoya picked up on the second ring. "Hey, big brother," she said. "Everything okay?" I hesitated, then said, "Camille just walked out." Latoya's voice sharpened. "What happened?" I told her exactly what Camille had said. When I finished, there was silence on the line for a long moment. Then Latoya said, "You need a lawyer." My shoulders sagged. "Yeah, I figured. I just did not think we would get here. Not over this." Latoya said, "I know someone. Estate planning specialist. He is good. Really good. He set some things up for one of my co-workers when she went through a divorce. I will text you his information. Call him tomorrow. Do not wait on this." The next morning, I woke up in a house that already felt different. Camille's side of the bed was empty. Her toothbrush was still in the bathroom, her shoes still by the front door. But the air had shifted. I went through my usual routine on autopilot, then sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone until the clock hit 9. Then I called the number Latoya had sent. The estate planning attorney's name was Malcolm Price. His office was in an old brick building downtown, in a city that had seen better days but still held on to its history, Cleveland, where my father had built his life. I took off work early, put on a shirt and tie, and drove there in a daze. The elevator was slow. His office door had frosted glass with his name in gold letters. Inside, the walls were lined with dark wood paneling and shelves full of heavy law books. Framed diplomas from the 1980s and 1990s hung behind his desk. Malcolm himself was in his early 60s, with close-cropped silver hair and a sharp suit that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. He looked at me over his reading glasses with an expression like nothing I was about to say would surprise him. "Jalen Brooks," he said. "Have a seat." His voice was calm, measured, the kind of voice that had seen way too many disasters and had learned how to move through them slowly. I told him everything. I told him about my father, the business, the sale, the inheritance. I explained how I had opened the separate account, how I had told Camille everything, how she had reacted at first, how the requests had started, how they had escalated. I repeated her exact words about being added to the account and about leaving. I told him she had walked out and gone to her mother's house. Malcolm listened without interrupting. He did not nod or shake his head. He just watched me carefully. When I finished, he leaned back in his leather chair and steepled his fingers. "May I be blunt with you, Jalen?" he asked. "Please," I said. Malcolm said, "Your wife just told you exactly who she is. She made it clear that, when it comes down to it, she values that money more than she values the marriage. That is what an ultimatum means. Believe what she showed you. I stared at the floor. I'm starting to, I said quietly. Malcolm nodded once. Good. Because here's what we are going to do, and we are going to do it quickly. Your father left you a substantial inheritance. That inheritance is, under the law, your separate property. Your wife may try to muddy that if she files for divorce. So we are going to create an irrevocable trust. I looked up. What exactly does that do? He pulled a legal pad closer. We transfer the inheritance into the trust. We make you the primary beneficiary. We can make you and your sister co-trustees. And we write the trust so that spouses are specifically excluded from any claim to the assets. If your wife files for divorce tomorrow, or 10 years from now, the money remains completely protected. It cannot be touched, divided, or claimed as marital property. It is locked down. My heart started to race for a different reason. How fast can we do that? I asked. Malcolm smiled slightly. I can have a draft ready by the end of the week. You review it, sign early next week, and we transfer the assets that same week. Once the trust is irrevocable, even you cannot dissolve it. That is what makes it so secure. You understand that? I nodded. Yes. Do it. Whatever paperwork you need from me, I will get it to you today. Malcolm said, smart man. Your father raised you well. Let us protect what he earned. That evening, Camille texted me for the first time since she left. The message read, have you calmed down? Ready to talk about this like adults? I stared at it for a long time before replying. My answer is still no. I'm not adding you to that account. She responded almost immediately. I'm serious, Jalen. This is a deal breaker for me. I will not stay in a marriage where I am treated like I cannot be trusted. I typed back. You gave me an ultimatum. You threatened to end our marriage over money that was never yours. I am taking you at your word. After that, she called me selfish, said the money was changing me, said I was becoming a different person. I stopped responding. There was nothing left to say. Over the next 2 weeks, Camille stayed at her mother's house. She sent a few more texts asking if I had come to my senses. Each time, I left the message on read. I forced myself not to argue, not to explain, not to defend myself. Latoya checked in on me regularly, bringing over dinner a few times, telling me stories about our father to keep his memory alive in a way that was separate from all this chaos. A week and a half after I met with Malcolm, the trust documents were finalized. I went back to his office, sat in that same leather chair, and signed page after page after page. The trust named me and Latoya as co-trustees and me as the sole lifetime beneficiary. The section explicitly excluding spouses from any claim to present or future trust assets took up almost a full page in tight, unforgiving language. When the last signature was done, Malcolm slid the documents into a folder and said, "Congratulations. Your father's legacy is now insulated from any potential marital claims. The next step is transferring the funds." We wired all $823,000 into the trust account by the end of the week. Watching the balance leave my individual investment account and reappear under the trust's name made my chest tight, but also strangely relieved. It was like putting something priceless into a safe after keeping it sitting on a table. A few days after the transfer, Camille came by the house on a weekday afternoon while I was at work. She had texted earlier, saying, "I need to pick up some clothes." I had replied, "It is your house too. You do not need my permission to get your things." When I came home that evening, half of her clothes were gone from the closet. Her hair products were missing from the bathroom counter. A single house key sat on the kitchen counter. 3 weeks after she walked out, I got a flat manila envelope in the mail with unfamiliar legal letterhead. Inside was a divorce petition. Her attorney's name was Reggie Cole. I looked him up later. Small practice. Mixed reviews. The petition itself was full of formatting errors and a few obvious typos. What mattered more than the sloppy presentation was what it asked for. Half of everything, including half of my inheritance. Latoya put me in touch with a divorce attorney she knew through a coworker. Her name was Michelle Johnson. Late 50s, always in a power suit, reputation around town for being sharp and absolutely unwilling to tolerate nonsense. At our first meeting, she spread the divorce petition across her desk and smiled like she had just been handed an easy win. Michelle tapped the section where Reggie claimed my wife was entitled to half the inheritance. "This is not happening," she said calmly. "He might as well have asked for the moon." She looked up at me. "What is interesting is that your wife does not know that yet. But she's about to learn." Michelle drafted our response quickly. The proposed division: house equity split 50-50, joint accounts divided equally, retirement account handled according to state law. Then, in clear language, the inheritance was listed as separate property, held in an irrevocable trust, and not subject to division. We attached the entire trust document as an exhibit. Reggie requested financial discovery. Michelle and I gave them everything they were entitled to see. 3 years of bank statements, all investment account summaries, pay stubs, tax returns, documentation of the trust, every relevant number laid out in black and white. The spousal exclusion language in the trust was highlighted. A week or so later, Michelle called me. There was amusement in her voice. "Listen to this," she said, then put me on speaker and played a voicemail from Reggie. His voice sounded strained. "Michelle, hi, this is Reggie. We need to discuss this trust situation my client was not fully aware of. I think we should schedule a settlement conference. I'm sure we can work something out here." Michelle grinned. "Translation," she said, "his client just realized she has no claim to your father's money, and he is scrambling to salvage something before this gets worse for her." She told him, very politely, that we were absolutely willing to meet and discuss a settlement. The settlement conference was held in Michelle's office, in a big conference room with too much polished mahogany and tall windows overlooking the street. LaToya wanted to come, but Michelle advised me to keep it simple. Just me and her on our side. On the day, I wore a suit that felt slightly too formal, but gave me a thin layer of armor. Camille walked in with Reggie at her side, and, to my surprise, her mother, Gloria. The moment I saw Gloria, I knew this was going to be uglier than it needed to be. Gloria had never liked me. She thought her daughter could have married up, and she made vague comments about it whenever she had too much wine at holiday dinners. We all sat. Michelle's assistant brought in coffee in porcelain cups, a small show of formality. Camille would not meet my eyes. She stared at the table like if she looked at me, she might crack. Gloria sat next to her, jaw clenched, already glaring at me like I had personally robbed her. Reggie opened the conversation. "So," he began, "regarding the trust, it was established after the marriage. Our position is that it contains assets that, while inherited, were effectively used as marital funds and therefore should be subject to equitable distribution." Michelle did not even blink. She opened a folder, slid a copy of the trust toward Reggie, and said, "The trust was established during the separation. It is irrevocable, and it explicitly excludes spouses from any claim to present or future assets. The inheritance never entered the marital estate. It is separate property. There is nothing to distribute." Reggie frowned. "We would argue it was established in bad faith, to defraud my client of her marital rights. The timing is suspect. It appears designed to hide assets." Michelle smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You could make that argument," she said. "You would lose. Badly. The trust was created after your client threatened divorce and voluntarily left the marital home. My client was protecting an inheritance, which is his legal right, from someone who had just made it clear she valued money over the relationship. If anything, her ultimatum gave him a very strong reason to protect assets she never had any claim to." Camille finally spoke. Her voice shook. "That money is supposed to be ours. We are married, Jalen. We build a life together. That inheritance should be part of that." I looked at her and said quietly, "You filed for divorce, Camille. You told me you would leave if I did not give you access to that money. You made the choice to tie our marriage to that condition." Gloria leaned forward, eyes flashing. "You have always been selfish," she said. "Even when you were dating, I told Camille you were thinking only about yourself. You tricked her. You hid that money and then locked it away." Michelle raised a hand. "Let us keep this productive," she said. "Here are the facts. The inheritance is not subject to division. That is settled. We are willing to discuss actual marital assets, house equity, joint accounts, shared debts. But the trust is completely off the table." Reggie glanced at Camille. She was turning red, that vein in her forehead starting to show. "This is ridiculous," she said. "He is hiding money that we were supposed to share." He is punishing me, Michelle said. He is protecting his father's legacy from someone who threatened to leave him over it. There is a difference. Camille snapped. I am his wife. I am supposed to be his partner. I replied. You are the one who told me the marriage was over unless I handed over something my father left specifically to me. You put this line in the sand, not me. Camille shoved her chair back and stood up, eyes blazing. The chair rolled into the credenza behind her with a dull thud. You know what? She said. Fine. You want to play hardball? I want the house. Michelle remained calm. The house currently has approximately $118,000 in equity, she said. Under the law, you are entitled to half of that. That would be $59,000. No, Camille said. I do not want money. I want the house. I want to live there. He can get an apartment. Michelle tapped her pen against the pad. So you're demanding that he buy you out of your share, or that you will force a sale? She asked. Yes, Camille said. Her tone suggested she believed she had found some leverage. I had already prepared myself for this exact moment. I will buy you out, I said. Camille blinked. You will give me $59,000, she said slowly, like she was testing to see if I understood what that meant. Yes, I said. That is your legal half of the equity, and I will pay it. Then the house is mine, and this part is done. Camille lifted her chin again. I also want spousal support, she announced. Michelle leaned forward. On what basis? She asked. You are employed. Camille folded her arms. Part-time, she said. I only make around $28,000. He makes over $90,000. That is not fair. I have grown accustomed to a certain standard of living. Michelle said. You chose to work part-time. You are capable of working full-time. The court does not exist to subsidize lifestyle preferences. At best, you might convince a judge to grant temporary rehabilitative support to give you time to increase your income. A year, maybe 2. You might get $500 a month. Maybe less. Michelle turned to Reggie. You want to spend $5,000 or $6,000 in legal fees fighting for a potential $12,000 total? She asked mildly. Reggie shifted uncomfortably. Camille's expression changed as she did the math. He should have to pay my legal fees, she said. He has money. I shook my head. No, I said. I have an irrevocable trust that I cannot tap to pay marital debts. You pushed for this divorce. You chose to hire an attorney. You can pay your own legal fees. Gloria started whispering fiercely to Camille, words I could not quite catch, but the tone obvious. Camille's shoulders tensed. She pointed at me. This is garbage, she said. You are doing this on purpose to hurt me. I met her eyes. You hurt yourself when you threatened to end our marriage unless I surrendered money you never earned and never had a right to, I said. You walked out. You filed for divorce. This is just the result of those choices. Reggie stood up. Let us take a 15-minute break, he said. Everyone cool down. Get some air. They walked out together, Camille's heels hitting the hallway tile louder than necessary. Gloria shot me one last glare before the door closed. Michelle looked at me and said, she's going to come back with a list. Specific items from the house. Be ready to say no to a lot of it. We will agree to what is legally reasonable. Nothing more. 20 minutes later, they came back. Camille had a yellow legal pad in her hand, filled with handwritten items. She sat down, took a breath, and started reading. I want the living room sectional we bought from Ashley Furniture, she said. The bedroom set for my grandmother. That should be mine. I want the big 65-inch Samsung television. I want that framed signed jersey from the Falcons game in Atlanta. I want your collection of first edition Asimov novels. Those are worth money. And I want your car. You can get a new one with your money. I did not raise my voice. No, I said. No to all of that except your grandmother's bedroom set, which is yours anyway. The rest stays with me. Camille slammed the pad down. You owe me, she said. After everything I put into this marriage, you owe me something that hurts. That collection is worth thousands. You do not even read half of them anymore. I clenched my jaw. Those books were gifts from my father, one at a time, over 20 years, I said. They are not marital property. They are sentimental. They are mine. You do not get those because you are angry, Michelle added. Requesting property you have no legal claim to, after filing for divorce, sits uncomfortably close to attempted theft. Let us not move in that direction. The negotiation dragged on for 3 more hours. It felt like someone was slowly wringing out my nerves. Camille tried to claim things that were clearly mine, then try to walk back some of her own demands when it became obvious a judge would not support them. In the end, the settlement we hammered out was clear. Camille would get $59,000 for her half of the house equity. She would keep her Honda Accord, which was already in her name. She would get her personal clothing, jewelry, and cosmetics, as well as half of the furniture we had purchased together during the marriage. Things like our dining table, a few chairs, and one of the smaller televisions. No spousal support. Each of us would pay our own attorney fees. We would split the $4,000 in credit card debt half and half. When she signed the agreement, Camille looked at me with pure hatred. There was nothing left of the woman I had once loved in her eyes. "You are going to regret this," she said. Her voice was low but vibrating with anger. I looked back at her. "I really do not think I will," I replied. The divorce was finalized about 6 weeks later. The judge signed off on the settlement. I transferred the $59,000 to Camille from my regular savings and brokerage accounts, not the trust. It hurt to see that much vanish in one wire, but there was relief underneath the sting. The house was fully mine now. Her name came off the mortgage and the title. For the first time since all this began, I felt like I could breathe in my own home. Camille moved into an apartment at first, telling mutual friends she was just staying with her mother temporarily. That temporary arrangement lasted maybe 2 weeks before the real show started. Step 1 in her new campaign was to go after my reputation. She began telling everyone who would listen that I had hidden money from her, that I had cheated her in the divorce, that I had manipulated the legal system to steal what was rightfully hers. A couple of our mutual friends called me, confused. "Man, what happened?" One of them asked over the phone. "She is saying you had this huge inheritance and lock her out of it, that you blindsided her." I kept my answer simple and steady. "We got divorced," I said. "The settlement is final. I'm not going to relive the whole thing or argue with her side of the story. Believe what you want. I am moving on." Most people took that as a sign that there was more to the story and backed off. Some asked a few more questions and then let it go. I lost maybe 4 or 5 friends who decided to accept Camille's version without question. It stung, but the way I saw it, those friendships were not solid if they could be broken so easily. When the gossip did not get her what she wanted, Camille escalated. One evening after work, I found an envelope stuck in my front door, not mailed, just hand-delivered. Inside was a sheet of lined notebook paper. At the top, in her handwriting, she had written invoice. Below were itemized charges totaling $14,500, supposedly for home improvement she claimed she had paid for during the marriage. Paint, fixtures, decor. I took a picture of the paper and emailed it to Michelle. Within a day, Michelle sent Camille a formal letter. It stated, in precise legal language, that the divorce was final, all claims had been resolved in the settlement agreement, and that any further attempts to assert new claims outside of that agreement were improper. It also warned that continued direct contact with me regarding financial demands could be considered harassment, and that any necessary communication should go through her office. Camille got a new phone and started texting me from a different number anyway. The first message said, "You destroyed everything. I hope you're happy with yourself." The second read, "You're going to regret what you did to me." The third, "Everyone is going to know what kind of person you really are." I blocked the number after the fourth text, which was just another variation of the same theme. That was when her mother decided to get involved more directly. One afternoon, my boss called me in his office. Mr. Harris was a serious man, not easily rattled. He gestured for me to sit and said, "Your former mother-in-law just called my direct line. She somehow found my extension." My stomach knotted. "What did she say?" I asked. Mr. Harris shook his head with a faint look of disgust. "She claimed you were illegally withholding money from your ex-wife, and that the authorities might be investigating soon. I told her this is a workplace, not a courtroom, and that she should not call here again. But I wanted you to know it happened. If it happens again, we will document it and take action." I exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry she bothered you," I said. He shrugged. "You do not control what other people do. You have been a solid employee for years. I am not worried about rumors being spread by someone who cannot separate personal drama from work. Just keep doing your job." Michelle followed up with formal cease and desist letters to both Camille and Gloria. The letters outlined potential legal consequences for continued harassment, including defamation and interference with employment. There was about a week of silence after that. I started hoping that maybe, finally, it was over. It was not. Camille's next move was desperate. She filed a motion to reopen the divorce case. Her new filing claimed that she had signed the settlement agreement under emotional duress, that she had not fully understood the legal implications, and that the trust contained undisclosed marital assets that should have been divided. Michelle called me with a cheerfulness that surprised me. "Do not panic," she said. "This is a last-ditch attempt. She has no grounds. We will respond, but honestly, I am looking forward to this." We went back to court. The same judge who had finalized the divorce was on the bench, and he looked mildly annoyed to see our names on his docket again. Camille had a new attorney now. Reggie was gone. Her new lawyer, Lionel Banks, walked in with a sleek leather briefcase and an expensive suit that screamed higher hourly rate. This was costing Camille serious money. Lionel stood and addressed the judge. His voice was smooth, practiced. "Your Honor, my client signed the settlement agreement while under significant emotional distress. At the time, she was not fully aware of the existence and nature of the irrevocable trust that contains assets which, we contend, should be considered marital and subject to equitable distribution." Michelle stood next. When she spoke in that courtroom, the air seemed to tighten. "Your Honor, may I present a timeline?" she asked. The judge nodded. Michelle walked the court through everything, step by step. She explained how my father had left me an inheritance, how I had placed it in a separate account, and how Camille had been informed of its existence and amount from the start. She described Camille's ultimatum, her voluntary departure from the marital home, the 3-week separation, and the sequence of events leading up to the creation of the trust. She pointed out that the trust was created after Camille had already threatened divorce and left. Michelle presented copies of the trust documents and highlighted the irrevocability clauses and the explicit spousal exclusion language. She reminded the court that during the original divorce proceedings, we had provided full financial disclosure, including the inheritance and the trust. She pointed out that Camille, under oath, had acknowledged the inheritance in her own deposition. The judge flipped through the documents, expression flat. When he looked up at Camille, the irritation was no longer mild. "Ma'am," he said, "you were aware of this inheritance at the time you filed for divorce, correct?" Camille shifted in her seat. "Yes, Your Honor, but—" "And you had legal representation throughout the divorce proceedings?" He continued. "Yes, but my lawyer did not." "Did you sign the settlement agreement after having the opportunity to review it with your attorney?" the judge asked, cutting her off. Camille swallowed. "I did," she said, "but I did not understand that the money would be—" The judge put the documents down firmly. "That is not fraud," he said. "That is you not liking the outcome of a settlement you voluntarily signed with full representation. That does not meet the standard for reopening this case." He looked over his glasses at her, his tone turning even firmer. "Your motion is denied. The settlement stands as is." He paused, letting that sink in. "Furthermore, if you file any additional motions without substantial new evidence of actual fraud, coercion, or concealment of assets, I will entertain a motion for sanctions. Do you understand what that means, Ms. Brooks?" Camille glanced at Lionel, but he kept his eyes on the judge, jaw clenched. "It means," the judge continued, "that you would likely be required to pay Mr. Brooks's legal fees associated with those motions, and you could face additional penalties for frivolous litigation. Are we clear?" Camille's shoulders slumped. "Yes," she said quietly. The judge nodded once. "Good. We are done here," he said, and moved on to the next case. Outside the courtroom, Camille tried to approach me. Both Michelle and Lionel moved instinctively, positioning themselves between us. Camille raised her voice across the space. "You took everything," she shouted. "You took my life. You left me with nothing." I did not step toward her. "I took what was legally mine," I said. "You chose to leave. You chose to file for divorce. You just do not like that there were consequences to your choices." Her eyes filled with tears, but her voice was still edged with fury. "I loved you," she yelled. "I gave you 6 years of my life. You threw me away over money." Michelle touched my arm gently. "Do not engage," she murmured. "This is done. Walk away." She guided me toward the parking garage. Camille's voice followed us until the echo of it was swallowed by concrete. Back at Michelle's office, she made coffee in a machine that probably cost more than my car's monthly insurance. She handed me a mug and said, "That is the last time she brings this to court." The judge could not have been clearer. If any attorney takes her case now to try this again, that attorney is either desperate for money or truly incompetent. What if she tries anyway? I asked, still feeling jittery. Michelle shook her head. Did you see her face when the judge explained sanctions? She asked. She understood. She would be risking paying your legal fees on top of her own. There is stubborn, and then there is reckless. She is not reckless enough to keep throwing money at a dead end. She was right. Camille did not file anything else. I did not hear from her directly again for a while. But the social gossip network in our city is efficient. Friends and acquaintances filled in the rest of the story, whether I wanted to know it or not. Camille burned through the $59,000 from a settlement in under 4 months. She put a huge down payment on a new sport utility vehicle, a shiny Nissan Pathfinder she did not need. She bought new furniture for her apartment, another sectional, a glass coffee table, accent chairs. She took a 10-day trip to Miami Beach with 2 girlfriends, posting pictures of herself on the sand, drinks in hand, with captions about living her best life. She helped Gloria catch up on credit card bills. She ate out constantly. Every other picture was some restaurant plate or cocktail. The money went the way easy money usually does when someone does not see it as something that took decades to earn. When the money ran out, reality hit. Camille tried to get a personal loan to consolidate expenses. The bank called me as a reference because she had listed me without asking. The loan officer asked, "Can you speak to her reliability and financial responsibility?" Something inside me went very still. I answered, "I am not comfortable providing a reference for my ex-wife." The line went quiet. The loan was denied. Camille ended up selling the sport utility vehicle at a loss and moving in with Gloria, for real this time. Her part-time bookkeeping job did not cover much once the showroom shine wore off. She tried to get full-time hours at the accounting firm, but the positions had already been filled. I heard through acquaintances that she picked up a second job at a retail store, working evenings and weekends. She kept telling anyone who would listen that I had financially ruined her. Meanwhile, my life settled into something calmer. I refinanced the house when interest rates dipped and locked in a 2.8% rate. I made some updates using my own money. I repainted the living room, replaced the old couch with something that suited my taste, and turned the spare bedroom into an office with a proper desk and bookshelves. Slowly, the house shifted from our space to my space, and I realized how much I needed that mental separation. The trust did exactly what Malcolm said it would. It sat there, separate and secure, invested mostly in index funds and other conservative vehicles. It grew steadily, not explosively, but reliably. Latoya and I set up a scholarship fund in our father's name, using a small portion of the trust's annual returns. The first year, we were able to give out 2 scholarships to local engineering students from our city, each one big enough to cover a real chunk of tuition. Standing on a small stage at a local community center, handing those scholarship certificates to 2 nervous, excited students felt like the opposite of all those fights with Camille. It felt like we were doing exactly what our father would have wanted his money to do. Open doors for people who worked hard. About 14 months after the divorce was finalized, my life looked very different from the evenings when I sat alone at the table with cold chicken parmesan. I had gotten a promotion at work to lead engineer on a new aerospace project. The new position came with a pay raise and more responsibility. I started putting the extra income toward paying off the mortgage early. Instead of 25 years, my calculator now shows 8 years until the house is fully paid for. Around that same time, I met someone new. Her name is Jasmine. She teaches high school mathematics. She owns her own small condo across town, which she bought before we met. She takes pride in paying her own bills and has a very matter-of-fact attitude about money. We met at a friend's cookout, ended up talking about education, science, and terrible cafeteria food for an hour, and exchanged numbers almost as an afterthought. A few weeks into dating, I decided I had to tell her the basics about my divorce. Not the whole saga, but enough that she would not be blindsided later if she heard something from someone else. We were sitting on our balcony, watching the sunset over the city, when I said, "I need to tell you something about my past relationship." Jasmine listened quietly as I summarized what had happened. My father's death, the inheritance, Camille's increasing focus on the money, the ultimatum, the divorce, the trust. I did not give every detail, just the structure. When I finished, I braced myself for questions about the exact amount, about the trust, about whether she would ever have access. Instead, Jasmine shook her head slowly and said, "She gave you an ultimatum about your father's inheritance? That is wild." She looked at me. What did she think would happen? That you would just hand it over and pretend it did not change anything between you? I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. "I do not know," I said. Maybe she thought I valued the marriage more than my principles. Maybe she thought I would be too scared to call her bluff. Jasmine shrugged. "An ultimatum like that says everything you need to know about a person," she said. "I'm glad you did not cave. Your father worked his whole life for that. You honoring that does not make you selfish. It makes you loyal." That was it. No digging for dollar amounts, no hints about access, no suggestions about how we could put that money to work for us. Just understanding. We kept dating, slowly. No games, no pressure. When we split checks or took turns paying for dinner, it felt like an actual partnership, not a negotiation. A few months ago, I got a text from a number I did not recognize. The message read, "Just want you to know I'm doing fine. Better than ever. Never needed your money anyway." It took me a second to recognize the tone. It was Camille. I could hear her voice in those words, the same mix of defensiveness and pride. Michelle had warned me about this kind of message. She said, at some point, she might reach out not to reconcile, but to pull you back emotionally. She might send a message designed to make you feel guilty, or to make you wonder if you're too harsh. Do not engage. There is nothing left for you in that direction. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I put the phone down and did not respond. The message stayed there, unread in spirit, even though the notification faded. Eventually, I deleted it. Looking back, the entire experience taught me something I probably should have already known but had never been forced to act on. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Not who they say they are, not who you hope they could become, but who they show you through their choices and their demands. When Camille sat across from me and said, "Either you give me access to your father's inheritance, or I am leaving," she laid herself bare more brutally than if she had confessed to some minor mistake. She showed me that, in her mind, marriage gave her the right to leverage our relationship for money. She showed me that she was willing to threaten our entire life together to gain control over something that was never hers. The inheritance, at the end of the day, was never just about the number in the account. It was about my father waking up at 4 in the morning to meet a deadline. It was about him missing one of my middle school basketball games because a machine broke at the shop and he had to fix it. It was about my mother making dinner stretch while he poured everything into that business. It was about decades of sweat and sacrifice. Camille saw the inheritance as a jackpot, a golden ticket she thought she had earned by virtue of signing a marriage certificate. She wanted to control it, spend it, make decisions about it, and she believed that being my wife automatically gave her that right. When I said no, she decided to make the money a condition of our marriage. She believed that if she pushed hard enough, if she made the stakes high enough, I would cave. She miscalculated. I did not call her bluff. I accepted her terms and watched her walk away from a marriage she claimed to value more than anything. She tried to fight for the money in court. The legal system, with all its flaws, still recognized what the law has to say about inherited property and about irrevocable trusts. The judge told her no, twice. After that, she was left with the consequences of her own choices. Now she is living her life, working her jobs, dating whoever she is dating, telling whatever story she needs to tell about what happened. I am living mine. I wake up in a house that is quiet and peaceful. I go to work, lead a team building something my father would have been proud of. I check in with LaToya, talk about the next set of scholarships we will fund, and smile when I think about our father's name on that scholarship plaque. The trust sits where it is supposed to sit, not as a pile of untouchable gold, but as a foundation, a safety net for emergencies, a source of funding for something meaningful, like scholarships that help another young engineer get through school without drowning in debt. A piece of my father's story that is still doing something in the world. When I sit in my office at home, surrounded by the books my father gave me, those first edition Asimov novels with his handwriting inside the covers, I feel something I did not feel during that last year of my marriage. I feel aligned. I made the choice to protect my father's legacy, even when it cost me my marriage. I made the choice not to bend under an ultimatum that would have changed how I saw myself every time I looked in a mirror. People sometimes ask, quietly, if I ever regret not giving Camille just a little, of the inheritance to keep the peace? My answer is always the same. Every time she tried to use our marriage as leverage to get that money, she chipped away at the foundation of trust between us. By the time she walked out, that foundation was gone. The money did not ruin the marriage. The way she responded to the existence of the money did. Calling her ultimatum for what it was and letting her leave was not easy. It was lonely. It forced me to confront the possibility that maybe I was the problem, that maybe I was too rigid, too protective. But as time went on, as I watched her choices, as I saw her burn through her settlement and try to drag me back into court, the doubts faded. I think about that night at the dining table sometimes. The plates of chicken parmesan between us. The way the refrigerator hummed. The moment when she said, "Either you add me to the account, or I am leaving." And the moment when I realized that if I caved then, if I handed over control of my father's legacy out of fear of being alone, I would never be able to trust her again, and I would never be able to fully respect myself. So when she said, "You are going to die alone," outside that courtroom, with her voice echoing off the walls, I knew she was wrong. Being alone for a while is not the same as dying alone. I was alone when I watched my father take his last breath, and I was alone when I signed the trust documents. But I was also held up by my sister, by friends who stayed, by colleagues who respected me, and by the quiet knowledge that I had done the hard thing that was also the right thing. In the end, my father's money did not buy me happiness. It did not buy me a better marriage or a smoother path. What it did was reveal the truth about the person I had chosen to marry, and then give me the means to walk away from that truth without being financially destroyed. Camille wanted my father's money. She believed marriage entitled her to control assets she did not earn, did not sacrifice for, and did not truly understand. She chose an ultimatum. I chose to let her follow through on it. The trust did exactly what it was meant to do, and I'm living just fine without her. If you enjoyed this story, please like, comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.